Welcome back to 3 Trials of Barbecue. Today, we're going to be comparing our Tel-Trus versus our Inkbird grate level probes. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what we got. We've been running the pecos for about 45 minutes, warming it up, letting those temperatures stabilize. Let's go ahead and see what we're working with. So we have the Tel-Tru. So we have 2 probes. We have one around here, closest to the stack, one literally in front of this Tel-Tru, another one in front, grate level to this center one, and then one closest to this Tel-Tru. Now, if you compare this Tel-Tru to the last reading here, we're reading about 280, which says it's actually 396 grate level. So not accurate. But if we look at the center one's roughly about 305. And that one is reading 325. So it's getting closer. If we look at this first Tel-Tru here, we're about 280. And if you look at our first 2 probes, which is this is the one closest to the stack, and the other one is 280. This one's spot on. It is closest to the grate as well, so I don't see why it would be off. But you could tell these 2 are pretty accurate. So we're going to let it kind of settle down. Our first 2 probes around here are pretty spot on. 277, 283. There's a 6-degree difference. So we're going to let this die down, level out, and we'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, everyone. So check this out. We're at 239, 242, 239, 242, and our Tel-Tru is right at 240. Our middle gauge here, we're roughly about 260, and our third probe is about 260. So it seems to be in line. Our last probe, which is on the Inkbird saying 279, is actually on the Tel-Tru as 240. So what it tells me is that even though the Inkbird is at grate level, it's probably getting a little bit of heat from the firebox, but what's promising is that these 2 Tel-Trus are matching. This one's right at the middle. It's matching our first Tel-Tru right by the fire stack. Now, if you look at it, this is at 250, 245, so they're almost 5 degrees off. So I'm liking the fact that the Tel-Trus are really close to each other. Now, of course, this one's running a little hotter because the heat is rising. But the fact that my farthest probe and my first probe are leveling out, that tells me that that would be a pretty even cook. Now, based on going off the Tel-Trus, if I go off of the Inkbird, it tells me that it is running a little hotter, possibly because of the heat coming from that firebox right by that grate level. So we're going to continue to monitor this, see if they stabilize. We'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, y'all. So we're roughly around the 330 range. If you look at this first Tel-Tru, we're roughly about 315, which is pretty close to the stack there. It's showing 326, and if you look at this Tel-Tru here, we're roughly about 340, and that reflects this gauge here, which is actually the second probe. This probe seems to be giving me a little bit of a hard time. It's jumping all over the place. This third probe, which is over there, is acting up a little bit. It must have some damage, but for the most part, it's at 340, and this gauge is about 345. So what I'm noticing is that the stack and this gauge seem to be pretty spot on as far as being within 5 to 10 degrees. Now, this gauge here in the center is about 360, and none of the temperatures really reflect that, other than maybe this third one, which is pretty much close to the other. So this heat radiating up here is obviously going up. Our farthest probe is saying 418, which none of the gauges are even pegged at 400. So we're gonna let it die down, and we'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, y'all, so we're at a very low temperature. We're roughly about 225. Our first probe is reading 212 on the Inkbird, and we're roughly about 212 on the Tel-Tru. This top gauge, we're roughly about 230, which doesn't even reflect anything on the Inkbird. Our next closest temperature is 220. Our third probe on the Tel-Tru is at 220, which matches the Inkbird. So these two have been really consistent. I eliminated the third Inkbird and moved the hot one to where this location is because it was giving me false reads. Now, the Inkbird, which is 246, it's telling me this farthest grate temperature is 248. None of that reflects here, and then I'll show you. So we have the first probe right next to the Tel-Tru. We have the second probe, which is grill grate versus a higher, Tel-Tru. And then we have the medium in between the grate and the high Tel-Tru, which is right here. So for the most part, even at high temperatures, medium temperatures, and low temperatures, these two seem to be pretty accurate compared to the grill grate Inkbirds. So again, this Tel-Tru, it's getting all the heat that's going up and residing up there before it goes right back down. So yes, this can give us an accurate read if we had a second rack, but since we don't, this really is useless. And it actually tells me that I may not have to drop this gauge to grill grate level. Now, my thing is, I'd like to drop this to match, but I don't want to be in a hot spot here. So we have another biscuit test coming up where I'm going to be messing with the stack damper and the intake air vent and see if maybe we can move that hot spot closer to the firebox so we can cook and have more grill grate area, as well as maybe move that gauge down. So if you haven't hit them likes or subscribe, please do. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Subscribe on our play button.
Subscribe on our play button.